All right. I'd like to call to order Monday, October 6th, 2025, work session at 6 p.m. Today we have Councilor Holmes and Councilor Santiago are excused absence on the road. Everybody else is here. Our new members are here, as well as our student representative. Tonight we are joined, we were going to talk about general fund overview and possible solutions. And I'll turn it over to Assistant City Manager NJ Johnson from the staff lead on this.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor Council. So tonight, as the Mayor mentioned, is going to be the first of several conversations around the general fund. When we were talking about budget around May, the city manager had mentioned that, while we're able to balance our budget today, looking forward into the future, we do have a deficit in the general fund that we need to find some way to address. Either that will have to be on the cost side or the revenue side or some kind of combination of both. So this right here, what we're going to do, we're going to start by going into an overview, the basic functions of how the general fund works, what it supports and things like that. And then we as staff did an analysis on the general fund, mostly on the revenue side and also on the cost side. And then provide some scenarios to help you understand what the city's actual fiscal health is based on the kind of budget philosophy we want to approach the next couple years with. And then based on those, we'll go then into how we can go about developing some increase in our revenues. So starting with kind of the 101, the reason that we have a general fund in the first place is because all of the different kinds of revenues that cities receive, they're basically, if you get a certain type of revenue, you have certain allowable expenses you're allowed to use that on. So like we have a gas tax that comes in that can only be used for street improvements, so it goes to the street fund. So all of the general fund can sort of be seen as the catch-all. So it's supported by property taxes, interest, franchise fees, permits, intergovernmental revenues, which is just the state revenue sharing program, service charges, and then if we have either a loan or a grant that we have for a general fund oriented project, it would go in as revenue to the general fund. Overall, the general fund is about a quarter of the city's total budget. That can move up and down, over the years, just based on if there are really large projects like to the tune of millions of dollars that are in some funds or the general fund. But generally, it's around a quarter of the city's overall budget that we're talking about when we speak about the general fund. And then in terms of what it supports, the general fund supports the administration, which you can think of as just central city operations like finance, city manager, HR, records, that kind of thing. The planning department, police, municipal court, and parks. So those are what it supports. And like I mentioned earlier with the general fund balance, what we were trying to do as staff when we were looking at the budget is, okay, what is our regular operating budget? So we took out things like the building loan that we were going to use for the CDC purchase, or any kind of grant matching, or these sort of extra things that are not part of our actual operating mechanisms. They're special. They're special projects that we create funding for. And so we took those kinds of things out. And then what we also took out is we're not, again, in terms of this year, we see that we have cash carryover to the tune of millions of dollars that can support our general fund and not let us go in the hole. The problem is that you can't rely on cash carryover over and over if you're operating at a deficit. So that's what we're here to talk about today. But yeah, when we say that the budget has a deficit between $600,000 and $1 million, we're not saying that the city today is losing money or that we don't have the cash to support our general fund. It's just long-term, we would need to do something about it. So as you saw in the staff report in the packet, we went over 3 different kinds of scenarios for you all to understand the fiscal health of the city right now. The first one is the bare bones operation. So this is the scenario nobody wants to see. This includes lowering staff levels, no special projects, no training. So our staff are not being developed and staying up to date with current trends in their different professions. Yeah, no special projects, building maintenance and equipment maintenance gets deferred. This is just not the scenario that anybody wants to see. The only reason that I put it in here today is to show you that without raising revenues, we could balance our budget. We could balance our budget if we did the absolute bare minimum that a city has to do. But I don't think any of us want to be bare minimum. I think we want to look at these other scenarios. And scenario number 2 is what I'm calling quality operations. So this is more so standard than going bare minimum. This is, what do cities that run themselves well, what kind of things do they do? They have certain staffing levels. So, law enforcement's a great example of this. They have certain ratios based on population of law enforcement staff to keep the community safe. They train their staff. They send them to conferences and accommodate that so that your staff can stay up to date with all that's going on in the municipal government world. And then the third one is aspirational. So this is really, allowing us to go above and beyond, even in most cases, what we're doing today. So this adds a couple staff members in different key departments. It fully stays up to date with, like purchasing things like a police car every single year. This is really just where we want to be in our budget. If these numbers weren't a factor, if we could just have the level of service that we think is deserved here. So, and then when you look at these scenarios, scenario 1 shows effectively a balanced budget. It says 24,000 in the negative, but in a $6 million budget, we could find $24,000. Scenario 2 shows effectively a deficit of 1 million, and scenario 3 effectively shows a deficit of $2 million. So those are based on, and I can answer more questions about specifics of what those scenarios do, but I provided the general overview of the way that the city would approach its finances if we went with each of those scenarios. Let's see here.
So one of the reasons is, okay if I add to that. One of the things that the council will need to decide as we're looking for, because why we're here is how do we take care of the general fund? And the general fund in most cities in Oregon are struggling because of Measure 5 and 50, which limits taxes from actually growing beyond the assessed value and has limits on the total government. So this is not unique to Scappoose. In fact, we're one of the, I would say, have been a little bit better off than most cities throughout the state thus far. A lot of people have had to implement different measures years ago because of this problem with Measure 5 and 50 and our property taxes. The questions, the reason we want to look at the general fund first of what we're actually spending is it's important, if we're going to look at revenue sources and solutions, that we make sure that we have where we actually want to be at, as opposed to just where we are currently. Ask the question, do we have the right staffing for police department? Do like CEP donations that we do, are those the right amounts? Should there be less? Should there be more? Should we not do them at all? Some of these things that were within the council's purview outside of operations of giving to community events and other things, those all go into our deficit at different levels. And so it's important as we get closer to our budget to be able to look at those and say, are we still at the right levels? Should we go up or down on those? But then it helps us as we're coming up with the funding strategies of what dollar amount do we need to recover if we're actually going to go there, and according to what the council wants us to get to, because that helps in that analysis of just to get what type of fees or what type of routes we go there for.
Yeah, correct. Because all of the different strategies we're going to go over have different capacities of how much they can help us. Like one of them I just included just to cover things are increasing development fees. We bring in about $35,000. If we were to increase those by even 25%, that's not going to save the general fund in any of these scenarios. And so knowing what our deficit is based on the services we want is going to help us at some level decide what revenue options even get us to where we want to be. I think now that we've done a little bit of an overview, are there any questions that anyone has general fund based before we get into the different revenue raising options?
What is our current reserves?
I believe there's what, 1.7 million in reserves?
Our cash carryover is about 6 million this year. So we have unappropriated for about 1.7. The rest are built into the budget. We have contingencies that are part of that and other items such as projects this year that we've budgeted for. But the cash carryover is about a $6.5 million this current budget year is where we're at right now.
So how many years do you anticipate the current reserves lasting?
So that does go into, I mean, if we did no projects at just current staffing levels, it'd be about a little over 6 years, maybe 6 years, because we do have some projects this year that are going to eat away with Grabhorn Park and Veterans Park. So we do have some already built into this year that we've gotten grants for, but we still have some out of pocket we need to pay. But yeah, it's about a 6-year turnaround if we wanted to drain our reserves.
Yeah, I just, with the climate the way it is, I just wonder. Well, we can move along and I'll bring
Okay.
that up for a second half.
But what you're about to say, I mean, is now the time? Should we wait a little bit, let it go? These are all great questions of what we consider as, I mean, today we want to get the conversation going, make sure you guys know, or the council know where we're at, public, et cetera, and know what options there are, because some of them do take time, could take time. Some of them are quicker than others, or some could be implemented sooner in small chunks. Part of that, once again, when we look at these things, that's why the question is do we continue at our current? Do we want to go a little bit further? Do we reduce some? The option one that he has pretty much takes away 4 police officers. Yeah, we would still have a police department, but our service levels would be significantly down. Right? We could do it. We'd still have police services. We'd still be able to help, but it's not ideal, and we'd definitely be way understaffed compared to normal standards. So there would be a huge reduction in service. So that's why he mentions option one's not great. That would be a emergency if we had no money. Let's take that because we can and still provide services. But that would be, yeah, that last straw. We have to figure out something just for a couple of years till we come up with a solution. Right. We're not in that situation now. Like you mentioned, we do have a $6 million cash carryover. We have several years we can go through that depending on the projects that we do, and what park improvements or other improvements we do. But that is a great, goes back to the things that the council would consider as we're looking to implement some of these things.
You know, I'd just like to kind of leapfrog onto Tyler M's point. That, you know, it's I'm really glad you're being proactive here, because there are clouds on the horizon. And so, you know, if we can get ahead of that, we're going to be much better off than if we don't. So,
Right.
You know, thank you for bringing this up.
Yeah, I think it's very important we're doing this now. We've seen other cities, the rest of the state, all these issues, and I think it's very important that we probably start a little slow and educate us as well as our citizens. But I think we're going to really want to be transparent and hear from them as well and see what they're willing to help with. So I think it's very important we do this and educate as much as possible on, you know, what these things are costing, how much money we do need, other funding opportunities, things within our budget, like you said, the CEPs and things we have. You know, CEP is only like 55,000 a year or so. So just how much does that really take a bite out of $1 million? So it's good to bring this up now, especially with 2 new counselors too. It's a great opportunity to really dive in and see, because I think I've Googled it. Most cities start, and we're one of the very few that haven't. And I know coming out of COVID, we've been very conservative, I think, and now is the time when we're going to need to start spending more of that money, and we need to be able to pay for it.
Yeah, and what a lot of other cities are going through too is that hasn't been mentioned is with, you know, ARPA projects coming to an end and cities getting used to a certain level of completing things, and now that funding source is drying up. And definitely not here, but a lot of other agencies even use staff or even use ARPA money to pay for staff, and so they're having to have some very hard conversations about what to go forward with that now that has starting to dry up. So let's go into the options. And again, we're keeping it very general just to kind of get a temperature check from all of you, because in my mind, the next step would sort of be we go through these options and then staff would ask the council, what are you all interested in learning more about? And then we would start putting some numbers to this, like, okay, local option levy. If we went that route, how much could that bridge the gap that we're looking at right now? And so we could start getting into it. But if we're an absolute no on any of these, we're just not going to spend the time talking about it. So that's it. We're kind of trying to get a temperature check and do some really, really early learning on all of these. So with a local option levy, this one could be the largest source of raising revenue. It requires voter approval every 5 years. You see a lot of different agencies around the county going for that. Currently, statewide and locally, it's, as you all know, it's a pretty politically unpopular time for new local option levies. We do see ones that are existing, and people kind of think, well, I'm already paying for it. Tend to be more likely to be approved, but it's not just here in Columbia County. It's all around the state and likely nationwide, just given a lot of political factors right now.
So can I follow up on that one real quick? So local option levies are very interesting in Columbia County. So for the new counselors, as just a tax 101, I guess, with where we're at, I mentioned earlier Measure 5 and 50. What those did in Oregon, put a cap. They did a couple of things. So on one of them, you can't go over per thousand in a property tax. You can't go over $10 per thousand for government purposes. And that's shared among all districts, special districts, your fire, your 911, your library, and even all the city governments and the county. So all those go together. Combined, if there's anything over 10 taxed, then they call it compression, where it goes back down and people lose out on some of those taxes because you can't have past that cap, save on some very certain exclusions on there. The other part of that is they put a cap on how much property values can be raised to only 3% of assessed value each year. So where that created an issue for cities is real market values have almost doubled in that time since they put that in there, but 3% did not keep up with expenses. So to put that in context where we're at, if we were able to tax at real market, which I don't think anyone in the US really taxes at real market, but if you were to look at our current taxes compared to that gap, we could almost double our property tax income, but we have limited just because of those measures. So really there's about $2.5 million somewhere in there, whether it's one or wherever a normal assessed value would have come in compared to real market values, that we are not able to tax on just because of Oregon's law that is unique to Oregon. So local option levies in Columbia County, we're already looking at all the districts, taxing districts, everything really close to that $10 of government, and plus the climate in the area. They're just, and they're limited to 5 years. So every 5 years you have to go out for it. So it's usually not viewed as a sustainable way to fund operations. It's one way, but once again, there's a lot of difficulties and ambiguity if you're going to have that after 5 years. And it's hard to staff long-term positions for that if people fear they might lose a job in 5 years. So it is a possibility, but because of our situation in the county, with us already being close to that $10 cap, and the fact that there is that 5 year having to go back to the voters every single time to try to renew it for something that we may not even be getting taxes for because of compression, it's not viewed as a strong option, but it is an option.
And Ben, do you know how close to the 10 we are?
It would depend. There are other agencies out there that have local options, some that are looking for them. So it just depends. That's what's so unique about Columbia County. When I was in Umatilla, we didn't have this many. There's like 3 or 4 of them out there. So we're competing with those same tax dollars in essence, and only adding to that. We were really close a year or 2 ago when there was all the local options approved. There's some in limbo or whatever, but it's close. I mean, we really probably would be in compression if we try to go for any local option levy separate from any of that.
Can you speak a little bit more about how compression, speak a little bit more about how compression works? Is it a proportional thing so that, like if the voters approve, $1 per $100,000 or $1,000, does that get just cut off because there's already some that are already in the pipeline, or is that, do all of these local options get lumped together and then
That would be a great question for the assessor for an exact answer, but in general, what I've been told, yes, you can go beyond the 10, but once you have anything in compression beyond that, they kind of siphon that out and it takes out of everybody's pocket a little bit proportionately. So you would not get the whole dollar. The only time that that money is protected is usually on bond. Like if you go out for a bond, that money is still in full. You can go beyond there, but that's usually for infrastructure type things. Whereas local option levies, everybody bears the burden of that. It kind of takes away from everybody.
And the compression is based on each individual property.
It is, yes, it is
And
unique
so,
to each property.
You know, some may, you know, Warren may not, because they're not in Caboose and don't have the compression because of something else or.
Yeah, they look at the real market value compared to the assessed value, how it works. I mean, they have all these formulas.
Do we know what is our average assessed value for Scappoose? 250,000, 225,000. I mean, your real market value is 500 to 700,000, but your assessed value is like 225. And that's what our taxes are based on. And what is our permanent rate?
2 point something.
3.2,
3.7.
so 3 point something. I'd have to look
It's
at
a
it.
decent compared to some cities.
Right. It's not terrible.
But that's a permanent tax rate and based on per thousand
Right.
of assessed value, which can only go up max 3 per year. Some years less, but max 3. And to do a local option levy, my question is, does it have to be specific to it? If we say we're going to go out for a levy, does it have to be, do we have to say for police salaries, you know, safety salaries, or does it have to be specific and we have to?
I mean, yeah, you would have to tell them what you're going out for. I mean, you could go for general admin. I mean, you just have to tell them what it's for, because that's what they'd be voting on if they want to support that. And it's usually for personnel of some type.
But is that more of a marketing thing? Like if this is going in the general fund, it could be used for anything, correct?
No, when you have something that's earmarked for a specific purpose, enterprise type funds or earmarked funds, those have to be used for that purpose. The caveat of that is in some instances, if you're using that, let's say you did a park local option levy for personnel, you're doing that to pay for those staff, as long as you haven't changed staffing, well, the money that you were using for that could be used for something else. So it does free up some funds in some cases, but sometimes it's also to hire new staff, so it doesn't free that up. It just depends on the situation.
Carol has some numbers. She says she can get out to us tomorrow.
Okay. Oh, good.
Better number. And so like if you're doing a levy, you're going to say, okay, we want to raise 500,000. You pick a number, basically the amount that you want, and you can back and determine how much that is per thousand, like what each household or property is going to be paying. So you determine how much you want to raise.
Go ahead.
I can add to that because I just worked with Andrea, the county assessor, on this recently. So she's able to, she has a worksheet. And if we come up with a number that we need to raise, or any entity comes up with the number they want to raise, she can basically put it in to see how much the per thousand rate needs to be. Just adding on to what Ben said, just to kind of add some clarity here. So, and this is more for our new counselors, and just in case you don't know. So every public entity in the county, well, everywhere really, has a permanent rate. For example, the 901 district is 25.54 cents. That raises about half of what the revenue is that they need to operate. So then they ask for an option levy that's historically been 29 cents. Just to give perspective on how many option levies there are just in our area that would be impacted, the fire district has one. I think the library has one. The sheriff's office has one for enforcement, and the sheriff's office has one for the jail. And we were over the $10 limit, and that did cause compression. And then the 901 district option levy fell out because it failed. So we probably will be back in compression here pretty soon. And then just to clarify, what happens is all those option levies first get pushed down an amount. And then if needed, there's some sort of formula, and I don't know exactly what it is. The permanent option levy rates can also be affected as well and be pushed down.
So if we went for 20 cents per thousand and it caused compression, our own 20 could end up being less.
Right.
Yeah.
Compress your own. And it's hard to budget on that each year if you're budgeting a certain number,
Exactly.
and then all of a sudden it goes down and you weren't expecting that.
And there are a lot of taxing districts in the county that are in compression. And it is based on a count. A count is basically like a property, but you'll hear Andrea refer to it as, the county assessor refer to it as an account. And the reason they have to look at it as per count, because there's different areas, different taxing districts, different option levies apply. For example, the fire district is only going to apply within the fire district boundaries. So that's why they have to be calculated on a per account basis.
And they also have taken the measure 5 and 50 limits for each house, because those all are calculated different depending on when they were built, which affects their assessed value.
They can go up more on a major remodel, but they don't go up to real market value. They go up based on other houses around them. I know the state is really big into the toll tax. I know LOC, and maybe we can ask Ashley when she's here, but that is a big item that they keep talking about, tax reform and stuff.
Indeed.
It's just so hard to get enough people on board to make any big changes. But
Right.
they're gonna have to, and that would affect us as well.
Right, and so for those reasons, the nice thing, the municipalities have some other options too that special districts don't have. So that's also another, I guess you could look at that as leaving those options for the districts, because that's one of their only options, because we do have other ways we can pursue stuff as well. And pretty unique to municipalities that no other district really has. So I'll let you continue.
One last
Oh,
question. Quick
yeah.
one. So I understand then that we can have a local option levy that's dedicated, for example, solely to parks and police.
Right.
And so that opens up some avenues.
You can tailor it on the option levies. You can tailor it to whatever you want it to be. The key is that it has to be fully disclosed in the ballot title and
That needs to be used for that purpose.
exactly.
Right. Yeah, and like I mentioned at the beginning, with all our different funds, we already do that. We already have dollars that can only be used for such and such purposes, and so that wouldn't be an issue on our end. But yeah, you're right. And as Marty said too, it also helps too with your marketing for it if you were to go that route. Just the kind of services that people are more connected to. Generally, just general administration doesn't sound as appealing for people to donate more of their money to. The last thing I'll mention too in a local option levy is, because it's inherently political, the Oregon Secretary of State's office has pretty strict regulations, and they're clear, so you know how to follow them, but on how staff can participate, on this issue. Essentially, staff can provide facts to people when they're asked to do so. And so for the gas tax that in 2019, that was essentially how it was followed. They had forms that had information, but that's all they could provide. They can't take a stance on it as the city staff. You all can, you're elected officials. You can do that kind of thing for a ballot initiative, but staff cannot. And so it would take quite an effort on city council's part in order to promote, get ahead of any kind of interest groups that would be against a local option levy. It would be a pretty big undertaking on your part too.
What you could form a PAC, an accessory PAC could address some of that.
Right. It's just not staff. I mean, you
Right.
can do however else you want to market or advertise and get help for. It's just staff is by state statute and ethics
Staff
prohibited from
could
taking.
write the ballot. They could write the ballot measure and submit it. They could do that
Right.
as
In a
well.
technical, yeah.
And could they do, if we wanted to get feedback from the community, could they participate in getting, feedback from the community, whether before we decided to do this?
Yeah, I mean, just sending out like a survey to gather information,
Right.
as long as staff is not taking a position either way on something. And that's where you have to be very careful. Does it perceive that we're trying to lean one way, encourage one way?
Yeah.
Typically, after the ballot is initiated, that's really when that law goes into strong effect. That once there is a ballot measure that's submitted, staff has to stay completely neutral. And so sometimes even staff, if it, they have to be careful. I mean, there's a lot of things where some staff will avoid going to even a politician's town hall because they don't want to look like they're supporting a certain side of something. So it is, yes, staff try to be very careful with some of those things because there are good guidelines behind there for good reason. So any other questions for that one.
So is the gas tax a form of the local option levy?
No, the gas tax is a tax on specific goods, not on property.
So I'm just, yeah, okay. It's
Right, or
it's not-
the difference is local options are limited to 5 years. So they have to be renewed every 5 years or done away. And they have to be done specifically for personnel. Whereas a gas tax, they both these have to go to voters, but gas taxes can be indefinite if you wanted to, or you can sunset them. And they're specific for streets and those purposes. So different purposes, infrastructure.
That was like a 10-year.
Yeah, our
10-year.
current one, it does have a sunset, but it doesn't have to on that have a sunset.
So there's a specific ORS for gas taxes. Yeah.
Right.
But we only have about 4 years left on that one, right?
Yeah, 2029. Any more on local option levy? Okay. Franchise utility fees. So we charge franchise fees to different utility services that are not city services, and it's essentially for their use of our public right of way. So cable, internet, power, all those kinds of things that aren't provided by the city, but still dig up our roads and run their wires through it. We charge franchise fees for that, and there are different maximum percentages of their revenue within the city of Scappoose limits. Certain percentages that we're allowed to charge based on the type of entity it is. And I believe there are 2 or 3 franchise fees right now that we haven't maxed out on. I know one of them is power. Do you recall the others?
Power, natural gas, and garbage.
Okay. Those are the ones that we have not gone to the statutory maximum. So that could be an option.
But they're all contracted, right? So we're like, none
Right.
of them are due coming up for a new contract. this
Right.
year.
So yeah, to put that in context, if we were to put them up to, so most like telecom can go up to 7%, natural gas, PUD, those could all go to 7%. Now the PUD and the natural gas are not there. There's about 350,000 that we could be getting revenue if we went up to that and changed that. But
Would that be on just PUD or would
the
that? be-
PUD and natural gas combined, about 180, I believe, on PUD. And so the problem with that one, it is an option, and I would recommend in the future going there. But those contracts were negotiated right before I got here, and they don't come due till 2032 and 2033. So those are pretty far away, and those are our big ones, our biggest opportunity. Our garbage comes up this February, I believe, and it's about 40,000. So I mean, I would recommend we have 5% on that one going up to the 7%. It at least chips away at some, but those other ones we want to keep on the radar for in the next 7 years to adjust those when our contracts come due. So that would definitely be a future opportunity that we could look at.
Is telecom already maxed out?
Yes, telecom we have 7% already.
Yeah, most of them are 5 or 7%.
Yeah, PUD and natural gas, those were like 4 and 3%. So they got some good deals.
Yeah.
I know we did internet, cable, Comcast, but have we done landline in a while? Is there a CenturyTel or?
Is that a thing? We make $5 off of it.
Right. So I mean, getting into the label. So in general, the statute limitations that are well known, cable is set at 5%. Most everything else is set at, and that's by a federal statute, not a state. And everything else is up to 7%. And then some can even go higher than that. If my understanding, I have to look at those rules depending on the type of utility or agreement. But in general, most cities will go up to 7% on anything except cable type services.
Don't see it in there, but can we charge for wastewater, water?
Yes, so that is an option as well. So we can, and that is common and is illegal. Since our water, sewer, and stormwater are utilities, even though we own them, part of that enterprise, if they were not in the city, they would be getting charged a franchise fee. And so that is something that we can still charge as a separate enterprise. We don't have any fees right now on that. There are, I would say that's probably, once again, looking down the road. I know this next year, there's still a 7% for what we're trying to catch up on wastewater. If we did that, I would probably recommend getting the other ones first, but that is a great option as well. And then what I would recommend on that is, however long, however many years we start doing that, to implement it slowly, like only at 1%. So when Dave or Public Works does their yearly increase, they just fold in an extra percent. So it's not taking away from any of their current revenues. So we can just make it work together, but not have a big impact on customers or on the Public Works budget. It would be more of that methodical, let's get it up there to 7% eventually over many years.
And all those just go into the general fund, but not like specific.
Right, those would be unearmarked, so just be anything in the general fund, just like the rest of the franchise fees.
Now, do we have an idea how many communities in Oregon have a general sales tax?
General sales tax, we can't do. That is a state, and we could double check with, I talked with her today, Ashley. There are some things that are statutorily only allowed by the state to do taxes for. And then there are some areas where the local can do. So a general sales tax is a state.
Okay,
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that would be a state.
Let me rephrase it, local sales tax. Like that would, when we were at the beach recently and there was a local sales tax that got.
Right. So like I say, it's just depending on so like grocery type sales tax, our state statute, we can't do them. But a prepared food, like you see on the coast, you can do. It still has to go to the voters. When we're looking, and we have those in there as options, the targeted personal income, all those may or may not have to go to the voters depending on how it's structured. And the way that she described it to me is if it's more viewed as a fee, not a tax, then it's just done through our normal process. If it's a tax, that would be a voter type thing as well for a local. To describe each situation, it would take an analysis depending on how it actually, if it fits under that tax or a fee based. And even though it may come out as a tax. So for example, and I don't have a great example, so I'm just throwing this out. I may be wrong on this, but if you're targeting a specific industry or whatever, but not, so let's say income tax, you're not just giving everybody in Scappoose income tax, but there's a reimbursement because the industrial areas are causing too much of a burden. So we're just charging them. That would be something that isn't a tax for everybody. It would be more of a targeted, like a fee. I don't know if that is 100% there. I'm just trying to give an example of how compared to every business does payroll tax regardless of your industry.
So we can't put tolls on a road.
Yeah. So yeah, but there are the abilities to do different types of taxes, such as a prepared food or drink, personal income, business income, payroll taxes. Those are usually your local options. Whether it's an actual tax or fee would depend on how it's structured.
You see it a lot too. Those go to funding cities' tourism initiatives because, especially if you're a coast town, you might have a low population of people that live there permanently, but you can recoup a lot of that in people that come and eat on the weekends in order to fund the stuff that you do because there's still a burden on the system, in general, but it's sort of a way to recoup that for tourism.
Like a transient lodging tax, we obviously don't make much on that.
Right.
How much would a hotel bring in a course of a year? And then what does that have to be earmarked for? I mean, a certain amount has to go towards tourism. Does it go into the general fund and then gets earmarked for those specific ones?
Yeah, I believe ours is, do you know their percentage? I looked at it recently, but I forgot. It was like 70, 20. I don't know. Yeah,
it's a lot better than the statewide one.
Right.
I think we're like 60-30.
Right. The majority of it has to go towards tourism type things. And there's a small amount that can go towards admin, police, et cetera, to help manage that. And they're trying to fix that because there's on the coast huge pockets of tourism money that just don't need to be used. The way that they have them earmarked, they can't use them. I think Seaside will always say, like, I can't advertise Seaside any more than I already do. I mean, people know where we are. We already got enough business. We don't need to keep doing that. Can we do it towards something else that helps the tourists come here while they're here? But yeah. Any other questions about those topics? So yeah, the franchise utility fees, we could, just to put that in perspective, if we today had a 7% on our current revenue for the storm water and wastewater, it'd be about 450,000 is what the yearly. The other advantage of a franchise fee, not just here, but for the other ones, is those usually grow with the utility. So as PUD raises their fees, ours naturally grows with it because we don't have to come back and adjust it. Just mathematically kind of grows without. So you don't always have to keep adjusting it. There's already a built-in growth with it.
The utilities just are passing these on to their customers.
So yeah, most of the time you see that. Yeah, they'll put it even on their bill sometimes, say franchise fee. Some will do a mix where they're doing well enough off. They just say we'll only push through some of that to the customers. But in general, let's say economics, you just expect to go to the customer.
Yeah, so, but it's a way for the city to be politically neutral with raising these funds where.
Right.
I have a question about the franchise fees.
Mhm.
So on the electric and gas franchise agreements that we have in place, we're years away from being able, there's no way to amend those or modify them until they expire. Is there any?
I need to read.
events?
I need to read through those. That was a thought I had. If we have at least for the friend, because sometimes they'll have it built in that the franchise fee can be renegotiated mid-contract, or some things can. It just depends. I haven't read through these ones specifically. That is something I plan on.
This was before your time, but some of those did come in front of us and I did push back on a couple terms, but I don't know what they were. I know that one of them was they wanted like a really long term. And I did push back on that and got it shorter. I do remember that, but I'm wondering if there's any qualifying events that would allow us to renegotiate the franchise fee, because 350,000, I think you estimated, is significant when we're looking at a 1.2 million dollar difference on scenario 2.
Right.
Look to
Yeah.
see if we ever put a kicker in there where we could renegotiate after so many years, or just on that one topic.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
look-
so we'll write that down as one that the council's interested in getting some more info back on, in terms of the contract
Just looking real
amendment.
quick, we've got in 45% has to be used towards tourism on transit. 45% of the transient lodging tax each year in support of parks and recreation facilities, programs, and services in Scappoose, in line with the Parks Master Plan. And so 10% for administration.
Okay. So the next one is a general service fee, and now we're transitioning into ones that can be approved through a vote of the council. We did specifically ask, you might have remembered at the annual town meeting, if you were attending, we had in the cafeteria poster surveys essentially, and some of the questions that we at least wanted to get an early idea on is, would you be interested in or supportive of a small fee in your utility bill to pay for parks? And then we also asked that same version for police. And granted, it's of your civically engaged annual town meeting attendee, but the overwhelming majority support was yes. And some even wrote on the thing small, so keeping costs in mind. But if you think about the between 2,000 and 3,000 properties that pay utility bills in the city, and then if you do $10 a month or even something like that becomes quickly a powerful revenue building tool. And yeah, you could call it what you want. You could call it general service fee. You could call it public safety fee. Whatever you think in terms of where you want the funds to go and how you want it to be perceived on people's utility bills.
On that, says there you could kind of tier it.
Yeah.
You could do based on property value, property type. I mean,
I would think property value would get into treating it too much like a tax.
And I want to be careful too with what we call this, because it's when St. Helens went through this, the people saw this as a fee on their water bill, a fee on their sewer bill, whatever. And that's what they associated with. And that's not what it really is. It's you get a bill from the city with all the services that you use, and it just so happens to be on that bill.
Right.
So I'd want to make sure that we always distinguish between you get a bill from the city and there's different services listed on those bills. It has nothing to do with the water. It has
Correct.
nothing to do with the sewer.
Yeah, so funding levels on that, just as a general idea, if you did $10 as an example for public safety, and then like $5 for parks, because those are the two areas that we're definitely looking at. We've received positive feedback from the community that they really want to continue to improve based off the council's goals, our workshop, and all the prior things with town halls. That would bring in about 550,000 at that rate. So that's just to give a idea of based off of, I think, 2,800 services. If you just did per property, like a $10, You can to businesses or places that have a little bit more use or service or I mean, there are different ways to put a nexus that can increase for like businesses that have a little more to charge a little more, so that might go up from there. But if you just did a flat cost, that's about what it would come out to be.
How do you do like a Fred Meyer? Do you do it to, I mean, bigger businesses and commercial different?
Sure, you could do commercial, you could do lot size. Yeah, there's different ways you can go about it again, but as Ben said, it has to be justified. It has to relate to an actual increase in service demand.
I think if it's for safety, that would be pretty.
Right.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, so we just look through different things. I know Grants Pass is one I look at because they did a presentation, League of Urban Cities, and they went through and they compared to Stanfield, we had a public safety fee, but it was just a flat fee for business. It was for everybody. It was the same thing, commercial, industrial, or residential. The downside is on those commercial, industrial that had a higher demand, they were paying the same as a regular property owner. So we started looking into some of that. Grants Pass had done something different where they were looking at those higher demands at different rates, so that they are paying, like for sure with public safety, that they're paying for those extra uses compared to the regular resident, so that it can keep costs down for those who don't use the service as much.
I have a question about the general service fees. Could we put that to a vote? Like you can a local option levy?
You can take anything to a vote. I mean, you can send, if you have a question, you can send it to the citizens to vote.
But the difference would be with this is that it wouldn't cause compression and it wouldn't be up for renewal every 5 years. But
Right, this isn't subject to Measure 5 and 50 because it's a city fee as opposed to a tax.
But if we went that route, we could at least get the buy-in from hopefully the voters and know that it was approved by the voters.
That could be an option if the council felt. to go
I know
that
St.
route.
Helens is kind of going through that. Are they looking at voting on the specific fee or voting on the ability to charge fees?
Mhm.
Like the voting on them allowing the city to add fees to their bill? Or they're voting on specific?
I don't know, but they have hit a lot of negative feedback, and I would rather our effort be put into educating the public and starting this as a positive than going through trying to push it through like St. Helens did, having backlash and having all of our effort put into defense.
Yeah.
And then ruining the whole thing. So it is good that we are getting ahead of this and can think this through on how to do it, but I do think the public support in the beginning is key. I'd rather put our effort into positive than defending negative.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know. I mean, yeah, that would be up to the council if they want to take that to the voter. I think you can accomplish getting that public feedback through community outreach as well. Some of the constraints from going to the voters on some things can lock you in a little harder to adjust and be flexible. So typically with these public safety fees, you want to tier it to also, go up with the cost of living index or some type of index so that it stays consistent with costs. The problem, I don't know. I don't know the whole story of St. Helens. I've seen it go very well in some cities and bad in others, depending on that public outreach. I don't think a lot of the bad publicity initially came from because St. Helens already had a fee. They got a lot of bad publicity lately when they tried to come up with an update to that fee. That was pretty significant. That infuriated from what I have seen a lot of the public because it was pretty drastic. But I don't know all the details on that, so I can't speak to the exacts on it. I just in the last year that what I've seen the response has been.
A lot of cities do this, so would they be able to get some studies done from other cities on, like cities of our size and bigger and smaller, how much, is it voted on? How does it go up? How, have they done surveys and things just to get an idea of, how it's gone in other cities?
Yeah, no, we can definitely do that. And some I didn't mention, but all of these different tools that we have at our disposal came from the League of Oregon Cities revenue building toolkit that they published. And in all of them, they have example case studies on what they did. And then, we could even reach out and talk to them and just see what all went into that.
Yeah, from my experience talking to most city managers and people who have done that, it's just usually been through the council. There's only been a few that anything that involved the voters was because there's a significant backlash from the voters that sent it to the polls. Because a voter can always put an initiative out there if they don't like something that council's put together and send it back and do a ballot measure to retract or redact that fee if it really was an issue. That was done in portation to the public. So there's still that measure. It doesn't, I mean, it's not like you can just do whatever you want and get away with it. The community still has the opportunity and the ability if there was any of that. But so typically what I've seen in these, and they are, I would almost venture to say the majority of most larger cities out there anymore, that they've already implemented these years ago. I would have to, I think it'd be hard to find one that doesn't have one that does. And the League of Oregon Cities has a good list of those of who have them. But yeah, we can get some of that information.
Do you think too, I mean, we kind of did bring this up at a town hall, but timing wise, that maybe that's another good tool at town hall, town meeting to really get or buy-in from, educate the citizens and get some feedback from them. So like Tyler said, I really want to be transparent, really want them to buy in and understand why they're being charged, what they're being charged. And I think if we're in the right, then I think it should go well. I mean, yes, we'll have people that are questioning it, but I think for the most part, the more we get the information out, the more we work with them, the more they understand it, it'll be easier to enact.
Yeah.
And I think the Councilor Miller brings up a good point, though, is that the bills that we get from the city are just water and stormwater, and they always have been, right? So like, when I get the bill from the city, I'm thinking this is water and water infrastructure. So if that bill suddenly goes up, unless there's some explicit kind of educational thing or, you know.
I think for months you'll have in there what that fee is for.
Sure, it will always identify in there what the fee is. Yeah. And we could probably structure to be separate from that to pretty well identify that.
Hey, I've got a kind of a question from way back when. When Judge Todd first came on board here in the courts, we looked at the uncollected revenue in the court system, and it was hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so, and I don't know, and then it just kind of evaporated, but I'm wondering if that isn't something we could explore as well.
No, we can absolutely explore that, but that wouldn't be recurring revenue. It'd be
but
it'd be help. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the way it was, some communities have done is they've contracted, so it's not labor intensive for
Right.
staff.
You get a collector.
Contracted with an outside agency, and they just split whatever they recover.
Yeah, we had that in Stanfield.
Yeah, but that's a significant pot of cash.
We don't have a collections agency now.
I'm not sure on that one. I would have to double check on that.
Okay.
We do. Are we collecting some of those outside revenues that were overdue? Oh, good.
A little bit.
But that's an improvement.
We have a few minutes left. If you want to talk about the development then.
Really shortly, because this one is in terms of the one we went more in depth in the staff report. This one just has such a short ceiling in terms of the revenue that it can raise. Additionally, too, when we did this fee study a few years ago, it was based on the older processes. And as you all know, we're moving less applications through Planning Commission. And so we're actually getting more efficient with how we process development applications. And so we don't really view it as the most equitable thing either, because you legally can't profit off of any service that the government charges money for. And you can't just, charge a higher rate than is deserved to pad your budget. And so just with the small ceiling here, and then, with changing circumstances around how applications get processed and the staff time it takes, we just don't view this one as super viable.
We did go up just a year or two ago. We raised our fees to get to 75%.
After the fee study, yes. And then we haven't since then. But now's a good time with about 6 minutes left to any kind of feedback, anything you're wanting to know more about, because like I said, this is going to be the first of many conversations we have about the general fund. So any additional information that you're wanting, or if you have particular revenue raising options that you want to explore more and have some more concrete numbers on.
I'd like to know what the figure would be if we went to 100% of our SDCs. So I think we're relatively low on SDCs.
What do you mean 100% of
Well,
what?
you said we're currently recovering 75%.
Oh, that's like land use. So if someone applies for site development review, it's
Yeah.
not the much larger system development charge. Those are two
Oh,
different
okay.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, and system development charges are for specific purposes that are not in the general fund. This would be for things that are recovering in just general fund specific.
Correct. This is covering like me, Lori, and Chris's time in reviewing an application.
So I too would like, I do think I would like to see though, what going up to 100% of, I think this is going to be an incremental thing that we roll out, you know, slowly.
Mhm.
And while some of these things do seem like they're, you know, not a lot of money, they do add up.
Right.
So I think for me, I would like to see what collecting 100% of the cost recovery for development fees looks like.
Okay.
I would like to know more about the franchise fees and what flexibility we have to amend those current agreements to try to get those up to the max 7%, because that in my mind at approximately 350,000 between electric and gas has a pretty good potential there.
Mhm.
And there was something else. I'm going to throw this out there. It probably isn't popular, but I do think that we need to review if we want to continue to do CEP. It seems backwards for us to be giving money away when we need money ourselves.
Yeah, I echo those two first ones that he said, and that third one on the things that we do that we could cut. I mean, it may only be 20,000 this year, 50,000, but those add up over time with all of this. CP now, and the urban renewal district ones, that's the ones, no, those are a little different because they're out of urban renewal dollars, and that's a whole different program. So
Mhm.
I kind of keep that separate, but obviously the money we give the senior center, CP, you know, we own some timber, what, you know, just give us
The
an idea.
events.
Yeah, just give us an idea, you know, how much money we have out there. We were to.
Right, and I think one of the biggest things we want to discover and work with the council is what funding levels do we really want to be at? Does that include CEP? Because if we want to come up with what that budget looks like and where we want to be, what type of staffing level do we want for the police department? If Chief has a recommendation to go up near term 2, 4, and just right after that, I mean, pretty close to get up to 16. If you're looking at the averages, the FBI averages, it's 2.4 per 1,000 residents. We're at like 1.5. So even if you went to 2, that would put us up to 16 FTE. We're only at 12. If you're looking at those, if you're looking at state averages, it's 1.8. So 16 would be adequate for that one as well. So there's staffing levels. If we want to do CEP, these are all the great questions of where do we want to be? Let's plan for that, and incrementally, let's get there. A couple of other things to consider when we're looking at the parks and public safety, those are near-term hot topics for the community. There is interest, and it'd be easier, even if we started off small, to get something to keep that going, because there was the risk of losing the police department. The people have been for wanting these parks and getting amenities out there. There's that community now that we can help say, yeah, if we solve some of these now, we have money in our reserves, we can make some of that happen. We can get it going now.
Ben, I do have a comment. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
you're fine.
didn't mean to cut you off. So we need about 1.2 million for scenario 2, but for what you're just explaining now with the police department, I agree with that. We do need to get up to the national average. We do need to get up to 2.5 per 1,000, but that's not even included in this. So before we start having conversations about what we're going to do to get revenue up, we really need to know what our goal is. So if it's going to include adding officers, staff to the police department, we really need to know, is this really 1.182 million, or is it really 2.5 for scenario 2 because we need to add staff?
Right. Yeah, and so to put that in context, if we looked at last year's actuals and we took away the excess in the Cascade Tissues revenue that we got in taxes, because that was only a 1-year thing, and we put our police officers at fully staffed because we were down this last year, we would have had a $600,000 deficit. If you just took those two variables and said a normal year, if we had full staffing, didn't have that, we would have been 600,000 negative. We ended up 800,000 positive, which is great, but it's definitely a 1-year anomaly on there. So it gave us at least a base. And then when you're looking at each officer, it's about 150,000, 160,000 per officer or per FTE to throw into our budget. So when you're looking at every
With
two.
benefits, just for the record.
Right.
With
Yes.
Benefits with, they're not making.
Wait, your officers don't make that per hour? Okay. Yeah, no, that's benefits, that's taxes, that's
Yeah.
insurance. There's so many things that goes into, that's just the cost to the city overall that comes. Yeah, good clarification on that. It's not their salary, but yeah, that's about.
Facebook in 5 seconds.
Right. When you're looking at the budget, that's about the impact to the overall budget per officer, uniforms, et cetera, that we had when we put the numbers in. That's kind of what it currently affected them at. So just to give a general sense, I mean, it's not exact, but you could at least play that out. We're at 12, we want to get to 16. Well, that's going to be 600,000 to get there, if that's the only consideration. If we're looking at, yeah, so there's a lot of things we can do. There's also development that's going in that should bring another $100,000 to $200,000 in taxes already.
Yeah,
That
I
will
can
help
see
buffer that a little
where
bit.
the estimate is on 100,000.
Right, 100 new houses. We have a couple new commercial business going in, so it should be in there as well to help out some of that. So there are many things we could probably do, and we're past 7. So good things to think about, council, and we will continue these conversations.
Well, I thank you guys for being very conservative up to this time and very responsible with our ARPA dollars. I know a lot of other cities, we go all the time, they're hurting, they're $1 million below budget. And we've done a really good job, but we're really looking towards the future and want to stay there. So appreciate looking at this. If you have any information, I guess you could email NJ or talk to NJ or Ben and give them your feedback.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, thank you.